I would like to welcome you very warmly at today's meeting organized by Deloitte Poland and Warsaw School of Economics, devoted to the topic of millennials at work. My name is Katarzyna Pisarska. I'm the director and founder of the European Academy of Diplomacy that also works very extensively on a daily basis with millennials. And I'm happy to open this meeting with a distinguished panel of guests, and most importantly, our honored guest, Chipem Espinozą, who will present to us a wonderful report on millennials. I would also like to welcome all the representatives of Deloitte, of the many other companies, but most importantly, our rector, the Warsaw School of Economics rector, Professor Tomasz Szapiro. To tell you the truth, I'm very excited about this meeting because this is a meeting about you. It's a meeting about your expectations. It's a meeting about your dreams. It's a meeting about who you are. And to tell you the truth, although I think the age difference between some of us is very small, I know that your generation is very special. It's very different. It has characteristics that no other generation had before because it's a global generation. It's a generation that goes beyond borders and beyond structures and beyond hierarchies, and not only through technology, but really through a mindset. So I'm looking forward to today's meeting because we will be exploring what is so special about the generation of millennials and what makes you a good employee, a good person to change structures at the workforce. We are hoping very much to your contribution to this debate. We will start with a few words of introduction from some of our guests. We will proceed in presenting the report, and in the second hour we're going to have a debate with our 5 distinguished guests plus Chip, speaking about how companies, how institutions, how universities are working with millennials, how they are adjusting to this new global generation that we see. So I'm asking you to stay tuned with us here and the way you always do, be active and proactive here. On more technical points, just 2 things. If you are really a Twitter person. I know not all millennials like Twitter, but if you do like Twitter or Facebook, you can tweet at #millennials. We are going to, if you have some questions that you prefer not to ask personally, but via Twitter, you can do that, #millennials, and we will also be showing these tweets just there. And second, also very important, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Sztepan Sadurski, who will be drawing for us as we speak, as we go, the different topics from the book of Chipem Espinozą and the different ideas from that book. So not only will you have the speeches and and the debate, but also a full visualization of what we have in this book. And I hope that you will find that useful for your future careers. With no further delay, I would like to ask to join me here at the floor and yield the floor to Professor Szapiro, the rector of Warsaw School of Economics. Panie profesorze.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome at SGH. I guess most of you knows this abbreviation. SGH, Warsaw School of Economics, is very happy to have you here. In fact, tomorrow we have birthday, and all of us, we always associate birthdays with gifts. So here, if I'm in a sort of symbolic role, not only as a person, but also in the role of a rector, I would like to explain that I feel gifted. I feel gifted today, a day earlier, as you are the gift. I mean people who are interested not only in going through manuals, not only listening classes and professors, but also wanting to interact. A key concept in education is, in fact, nowadays interaction. And these interactions are very different, and we try to enrich this because it is like this, but not only. So now, in walls of universities, interact students with professors, students with alumni, alumni with professors, and, which is probably for us, the most instructive, the interaction with corporations and firms. And why we needed that so much? After the Bologna process, we learned that not only knowledge is important, it's very important to be knowledgeable, to be a person of success. And not only skill of applying knowledge is important, and not only even attitude that helps us to behave in moments of uncertainty. Not only professional attitude is important. What is really extremely important is to find yourself in a team when you are at work and you face a reality, not matrix, not simulation game, but reality. And this reality is a team. And we are in slightly different environment than we used to be some 15, 20, 30 years ago. This is extremely changing, fast-changing environment, dynamically, and it requires us to find ourselves in several different teams and change teams and behave in a way that will help us to develop our talents, skills, and knowledge from university. And this is probably a reason, as I understood from the book of Chipem Espinozą, a reason why he wanted to help us, and that's one of the reasons that we feel gifted, that he will do it in person and will explain us how people who enter the next millennium, so were born some 25 years ago, 20 years, 15 years ago, how they should learn and master things, skills, attitudes that will help them to find in a new world, a new environment, which will be changing, and you will also change environments. So this is really extremely important, and my presence here is also to emphasize that as a role, as a rector, a symbolic person, I represent the attitude of the university that will expand these relations and interactions between corporations, economic environment, students, professors, and create integrated world. It is my privilege to thank for gifts, and therefore I would like to thank, and I think we will give a nice applause to some people. First of all, to Chipem Espinozą for giving us also opportunity to meet together, debate, and learn about this content. So let us. To Gavin Flug, who is Executive Committee member of Deloitte Central Europe. And here I would like to say that in a sense he also represents the Corporation Club of Warsaw School of Economics and represents a really incredibly interesting partner and helpful and assisting in everything that we do. And he has a long list of experiences, including personal, professional development, learning, recruitment, mobility, diversity, and it's not enough, even audit and advisory. I am very happy to welcome Krzysztof Kwiecień, who is lead HR director for Central Europe, member of the board. Whoa. And a spokesman, Ewa Rzeczkowska. Thank you very much for helping to organize it from our university, and let the show go on and start the event.
Bardzo dziękujemy, panie rektorze. And now, ladies and gentlemen, one more introductory speech by Gavin Flug, which was so nicely introduced already by the rector, who is a talent partner in Deloitte and actually deals on a daily basis with diversity and how to make the best of diversity in Deloitte happen. So he'll tell us in a few sentences how that actually works.
Good afternoon. I have no idea about the acoustics in this room. I've been down at the front. How is it at the back? Can you hear me okay? Okay, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at least you can hear me. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, and it's wonderful to be here in Warsaw. I was thinking when I was sitting there, why am I here? Why am I here in Warsaw today to be fortunate enough to be spending my time with all of you? And I was thinking, actually it brings me back to my purpose even for being. Kind of philosophical, I guess. But in Warsaw, two of the most important things in my life happened. I lived here from 2005 to 2011, and it was the most wonderful time of my professional career. My purpose here is to serve clients and to be a leader in Deloitte and to help people like you to have successful careers. My second purpose for being is as a father, and I have two beautiful girls who were both born here in Warsaw. So every time I come back to Poland, I have sort of a tear in my eye because it takes me back to those times when the girls were born and had their first steps and first words and everything else. The idea of purpose is more than just sort of a phrase. It's something that I'm very passionate about, but it's also something that has a bit more of a meaning in a business sense. We actually, as a business of 5,000 people in Central Europe and 20,000 people worldwide, we actually have a purpose beyond making money and serving our clients. It's a purpose to have an impact. We try to achieve something positive beyond the pure day-to-day business stuff. And the impact we make can be measured in many ways. It's an impact with people like yourselves, an impact with our clients, an impact on the community in which we operate. The other thing why I'm here is I want to be impacted upon. It's not just about me wearing the green dot and I've got the microphone, lucky me for 5 minutes. It's about me having an impact made on me, which will help me to be a better father, help me to be a better leader and serve my clients, etc. So all of you are now recruited as part of that positive impact on me to help me accomplish my purpose. And for that reason, I have no slides because I sort of made up what I'm going to say as I was sitting here in the room, absorbing the atmosphere and listening even to the first words. Last week, I was at another university, Deloitte University. I don't know if you know that. We have a Deloitte University which has a base in the US, a base in Singapore just opening up, and a base here in Europe. So I was part of a faculty with a class of our younger colleagues, and that's a wonderful opportunity for me to be connected and impacted upon. But it's also evidence that what we try to do is, if you like, bridge the generation gap. Our firm does have a sort of a hierarchy with partners and managers and juniors. But what we can do in the university is bring myself as a partner, other leaders in the firm, directly to our people. If you like, taking out one or two of the layers in that hierarchy where we can have a direct dialogue. And I learn just as much listening as I do by speaking at those sort of events. That's part of our diversity, is that connection from top to bottom in our organization, not just relying on successive layers. Other aspects of diversity, gender is an obvious one. So part of my mission is that we can convert more of our new hires, so about half and half, male, female, into partners. Great success so far. Ivona Georgiev is in the audience here. And we've increased by 50% the proportion of female partners in our firm in the last 4 years. It's not nearly enough, but it's something that we're absolutely dedicated to. Another, maybe in some circles, even controversial element of diversity. I'm not connected probably to any of you on Facebook yet. You might not even be on Facebook. Maybe you're past that. For me, it's still at the cutting edge. For you, it's probably boring old stuff. But if you went to my Facebook stream, you'll see that I posted something that was put out in the United States where we're taking a stand against legislation in 2 of the states, it was Mississippi and Alabama, who have passed legislation which opens the door for discrimination against the LGBT community. And as a firm, we're in principle just opposed to that. So that's something that we are ready to be public about in our support of diversity. If you go to YouTube, I'm just looking around for a reaction. Is YouTube also passé, or is that part of your current world? I don't know. But if you put in Deloitte 1-minute stories, what you'll see is about a dozen or so, and it's being increased all the time, stories about the real lives of our colleagues. I was one of the first. I felt an obligation to sort of be part of the initiative that started up, but there were way more fascinating stories than mine on there, and that gets to the real people, and you see the huge diversity of people that are in our organization. It's wonderful to see. One of the things that we talk about very often is getting past our business card, our green dot, our shirt and tie, to actually the people who we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Not the professionals we are for a few hours for 5 or 6 days every week. That's really how we try to live diversity rather than just have a policy on it. I'm well aware that you're not here because of me, although it's my privilege to be having a few minutes with you. So I'm going to hand over in a second to Chip. But please take opportunity, talk to each other, use this as an occasion to talk about an important subject with each other, talk to my colleagues, enjoy very much the afternoon, and all the best in your future careers.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the most important part of today's event, the presentation of the book Millennials at Work, 7 Skills Every 20-something Needs to Achieve Greatness at Work. So I would like to invite our special guest to the floor, Dr. Chipem Espinozą, who is not only the author of this book, but also the academic director of the organization psychology program at Concordia University, Irene, in the United States. What Chip does basically is he consults organizations, he consults companies from NGOs to business on how actually incorporate new generations in the company in a way that both the company and the employees can achieve greatness in. So he basically has a dream job. He travels from company to company and says what they're supposed to do. Is that it? Yeah, that's what I thought. So Chip, we are looking very much forward to this presentation, and after it, we're going to have a discussion, questions, answer with our experts on what we're going to learn from you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on 110 years. That's staying power. Good job. I want to thank MKey, my publisher in Poland. I was so excited when I heard that it was coming out in Polish. I first got interested in this topic as a university professor. I noticed a difference in my students between the 2000s and the 1990s. In the 1990s, if I handed out a syllabus on the first day of class, students would grab it, throw it in their backpack, and never look at it twice. In the 2000s, they would take the syllabus and take a red pen and go line by line through the entire thing. And they would see things like 10 to 12 page midterm paper. They would say, is 10 pages a C and 12 pages an A? They would say, how many classes can I miss and still get an A? But one thing that I understood for sure is that when they came into the classroom, they believed that everything was negotiable. Now, some of my colleagues that were professors as well had a problem with that. They were put off by that. But I didn't see it really as any usurping of my authority in the classroom. I saw it as people that came engagement ready. People that wanted to participate in the educational process. And so I decided to take advantage of that in the classroom, and ultimately I thought, these students that I have, how can I help them integrate into the workforce? If my fellow professors are having a problem with understanding them, I bet organizations are having a problem understanding them. So my first book was Managing the Millennials, and my attempt was simply to understand how do managers perceive young people? And are there effective managers, and are there challenge managers? And if so, what do the effective managers do? Well, as I got out and I was training on that book, and one of my first clients was Microsoft, another client was Schneider Electric out of France. And a guy out of Schneider Electric called me and he says, I read your book, Managing the Millennials. I want you to come and I want you to speak to a group of 100 people. Are you available? And I said, sure. Are they managers? Are they executives? He says, no, they're all new hires. And I said, my book's about managing the millennials. Did you really read it? He said, yeah. And I said, well, it talks about how they perceive millennials. Get a load of this. Self-absorbed, defensive, abrasive. They're going to stand and listen to me tell them how they're perceived. He goes, yeah, they're going to love it. So sure enough, I went and did the event, and afterwards, to a person, the millennials came up to me and said, you just demystified my experience at work. You just explained what I'm experiencing. So ultimately, what came of that was Millennials at Work. Now, by then, I had had international exposure, so I was able to go do my research throughout the world. And so it represents young professionals who had been working 1 to 3 years. And I asked them, what are the challenges you face when transitioning into a career life? For one, they experience culture shock. And the reason being is because almost every authority figure in their life prior to work, they perceived to be for them. Someone that was going to help them get to the next level of where they wanted to be. And yet when they got to work, it may be the first place they ever experience an authority figure that they don't perceive to be for them. Matter of fact, that they perceive to be antagonistic to their goals. So I wrote Millennials at Work. And then consequently, my most recent book is called Millennials Who Manage. I call the first wave of millennials people that went to work before 2009 and the second wave after 2009. And all of a sudden, I started to get questions from millennials in the audience saying, what do you do when you manage people older than you? And I identified the challenges in that book, and I'll share a couple if we have time at the end. I'm often asked, doesn't every generation have a problem with the next generation? And here's the issue. When we talk about generation in today's vernacular and the way we're going to talk about it, it's a sociological construct. And the first paper written on it was in 1928 by Karl Mannheim. He was a German sociologist. And he said that people of a similar age, going through adolescence, experiencing socioeconomic conditions, would shape a gestalt or a worldview. And so if we were all born in a village where there was no change whatsoever, you wouldn't see generational constructs. But the more change you see in society, you're probably going to see more change between generations. Now, I didn't come up with this term. It was a doctor out of University of Nebraska. He called the phenomenon demographic metabolism. Now, if I had a rock group, that's what I would name it. That would make a great t-shirt, don't you think? Demographic metabolism. And what it means is when one generation is moving out and another generation is moving in, you have the potential for conflict. You also have the potential for renewal and regeneration and new ideas. So yes, each generation in the context of what we're talking about today has a problem with the next generation. Here's another thing. Millennials are the first generation who has not needed an authority figure to access information. Matter of fact, an authority figure may be the last place that you will go to answer a question that you have. Because you're digital and you have the opportunity to crowdsource and to talk to your friends and search the internet, that sometimes an authority figure you don't know how to relate to. Matter of fact, what I believe's happened is because you don't have that felt need to build a relationship with authority, because there are some people in this room, as I look around, the only way that they were going to get answers, the only way they were going to have upward mobility in their organizations was to find somebody older than them and kiss up to them, okay? To do all of the dirty work so that they would have an opportunity. But when you don't have a felt need to move upward through another person, you might not develop the skills to build with authority. So one of the skills I'll share with you later, believe it or not, one of the best skills you can develop, as simple as it may seem, the way to get recognized quickest in a company is simply learn how to build a relationship with authority figures. You see, because if you're not going and building that relationship and asking questions, they interpret it one of three ways. One is that you know everything. Two is that you're indifferent and you don't care. And number three is that you don't think they have the answer. And so it's critical to understand what's happened is there's been a change in relationship to authority in the millennial generation. And so what it's done, older generations sit back and they scratch their heads and say, what is going on? All over the world, and why you're global is because this is happening in virtually every country. So here's another argument for our discussion today, and it's what we call group norm theory in sociology. If you look at that chart, guess who the dominant group numerically is? Millennials. You see, up until now in the workforce, baby boomers have pretty much directed the agenda of organizations. In other words, they get to set the agenda, and if you don't follow it, they get to sanction or punish you for not following it. But what we're finding today is that organizations recognize the baby boomers are retiring and moving out. And a new generation's coming in, and that generation has different ideas about how it wants to work, what its career is going to be like. And so up until now, most of the tension in organizations has been between baby boomers and millennials, but it's growing with Gen X and millennials. And the reason why, matter of fact, if you ever want to verify this, just look on any blog, and if somebody says something positive about a millennial, there'll be an Xer there to negate it, okay? And part of this is because of all the positions that are opening, millennials are being promoted into equal or greater positions with 10 to 15 years less experience. So that tension is being created. Now, my first study for the book is what we would call an inductive study. I started with a phenomena, observed it, and drilled it down to a theory. The second book is a deductive study. I started with a theory and moved it out to a solution. So here's what I thought. If millennials are perceived in a certain light in organizations, would that create specific barriers to them as part of the working population? So I went out and I asked young professionals, what are the biggest challenges that you face transitioning into work? And then I had them rank order those challenges. Now, here's a brief list of it. If you want to take a shot of the screen with your phone, here's the things, and they're rank ordered, that millennials faced. If you see number one, I thought it was very self-aware. Lack of experience. Lack of experience is the reason you don't get the job, you don't get the promotion, you don't get the raise. And what millennials want is to have more opportunity. And you'll see the next one on the list is not being taken seriously. I mean, you're studying hard, you're working hard. Your expectation when you go into an organization is that you're going to be one of them. And you're going to be able to make a contribution, and yet maybe sometimes you run into an organization that says, hey, why don't you sit here for about 3 years and then we'll listen to your ideas. You want them to be listened to today, not getting respect. Now here's probably one of the biggest perceptions of millennials, and I think it's a misperception, and that is that you're entitled, that you expect everything without having to work for it. And so the best way to overcome the perception of being entitled is to show appreciation. Matter of fact, if you don't take anything else away from today, learn how to speak to authority figures and learn how to show appreciation. One of the biggest complaints that managers had about their younger workers was anything I do that's nice for them, they just expect it. They don't acknowledge it. Now, by the way, I don't think that that's some character deficit. I think you've grown up in a world where the baseline is that people that care about you do nice things for you. And so maybe you don't see it or acknowledge it, but in the workforce, if somebody invites you to a meeting with them, acknowledge it, write them a note, say thank you, talk about what you learned. If they do something that you learned, acknowledge that, write them. A lack of patience. By the way, I think this is the #1 barrier to millennials getting to the next level. When I talked about leadership development in the 3rd book, I saw this as their Achilles heel. Staying long enough and being patient enough to learn the things to move to the next level of their career. And so a lack of patience, how do we overcome that? Well, first we have to try to look for reasons why we're waiting and look at what we can learn while we're waiting. Another one was understanding expectation. One of the biggest problems was a mismatch of expectation between young workers and their employers. And in that case, they want to know what's expected of you. Now, I say this in my 1st book, ambiguity is your kryptonite. If I want to freak a millennial out, I just act ambiguous. I don't give detail, and the reason being is because millennials are success-driven. If you don't feel like you have the directions and the details and the expectations clearly laid out in front of you, you feel you're being set up for failure. So, understanding expectations, miscommunication with older workers. Now, this surprised me. I didn't expect this. There is an awareness in the younger generation that they know that they are misunderstood, that their communication style may be curt, it may be short, and therefore it ends up in frustration at lack of being able to communicate with older workers. There is a real desire on millennials' part to relate to older workers and learn from them. Rigid processes. If there's one thing millennials hate, it's process. You go into an organization and you're quickly looking for a way to do it faster, simpler, and better, and make your job easier. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people have made a lot of money making things easier. Here's what I would say to you. Master their way before you introduce your way when you go into that job. And then the last piece is proving your value. So what I learned in teaching millennials, since we're in the university, is that the old model of sage on the stage. Now, I love that. That's kind of what we're doing today. I get to stand up here and lecture, and you don't get to say anything, right? And I just get to look good. Well, I get to stand up here and smile and say stuff. The second model was written about in the 1990s by a professor named Allison King, and she said the 21st century would call for a different pedagogy, a different way of teaching. She said that it needed to move to guide on the side. I think we're moving beyond just guide on the side to creating environments where we're learning with. Not to usurp the authority of a professor and not to be dismissive of the hard work and the degree, but that true engagement of learning with is what I think our future is like and what's really going to engage younger workers. So millennials, born between 83 and 2001. Now, one of the things you'll see in the literature, different names. Gen Y was probably the most popular initially. Now millennials is. Millennials tend to favor the term millennials over Gen Y. And one of the reasons is because they don't follow any generation, which would be Gen X, right? And so they like millennials. If you'll see on the term here, globals is probably the more accurate term for millennials. One thing I want to say also is the years, you'll see anything published born between 78 and 96 or 1980 and 2000. Just so you understand, in generational analysis, it's not an exact science. And so what we do is we just draw markers and we examine that population. So if you were born in 1984 and you want to be Gen X, you go ahead and be Gen X, okay? You don't have to be a millennial if you don't want to. So diverse ethnicities, millennials as a group walk into organizations, and if they don't see diversity, they think something is very wrong with that organization. They're skilled with technology and closer to parents than previous generations. 2/3 of all millennials say they're still dependent upon their parents financially, and the other third are lying. Parents change their parenting style to be more nurturing versus training. A lot of your parents, in the way they approach parenting, they didn't feel like they had a good relationship with their parents. And they decided they wanted to have a good relationship with you. And it's had a very positive effect, really, on society. But as we look at how you relate to authority, is very different in the workplace as a result. You expect, like I said, authority figures to be for you and friendly. 1 in 6 comes from a single parent home. 3 in 5 have working mothers. Current age range is basically 15 to 35. And collaboration has been emphasized through your lives, through teamwork, and you value participating with others. You can see already you're the biggest part of the international workforce and growing exponentially. And so the recent generations that are in the workforce today, and it's very minimal at that builder level. And I just want to point this out to you because the builders that are left in organizations, they really care about sharing their knowledge. Matter of fact, we have Google here. Google did Project Oxygen. At first, they didn't want to have managers. And they said, if we have to have managers, what should we expect from our managers? And I did that survey for my 3rd book. And I did it for managers across all ages. And builders scored #1 of all generations. And partly because they're not in the workforce to be upward mobile anymore. They're there to really participate and give back. Now let me tell you why I think it's critical for you to tap into these older generations. You know, I go around saying to companies, the people with the most responsibility have to adapt first. But I would say to you, if you want more responsibility, you have to adapt. And so the adaptive work you need to do, really, in this presentation is to help you get the manager that you want. You see, the odds are your first manager isn't going to understand you. But if you understand her or him, you can do the things you need to do to get the manager you want. You look at baby boomers 46 to 64, X 65 to 82, and millennials 83 to 2001. It's important to adapt. Let me tell you what I think is happening over the next 10 years. I think there'll be the greatest transfer of knowledge in the history of the world. As one of the largest generations and the baby boomer gives way to Xers and millennials, the transfer of knowledge is critically important to organizations and critically important to your career. Most of that knowledge is tacit knowledge, which means it's not written down. And the only way tacit knowledge gets transferred is through relationship. And if there's a disconnect in relationship, you lose that knowledge. So quickly, I'm going to go through the 7 skills that can help you achieve greatness at work and get the leader that you need. The first skill is to build a relationship. Everything is based on that. To initiate a relationship with your manager or older workers. Now, the perception of you in the organization is that you're self-absorbed and that all you do is care about yourself. One of the best ways to initiate this relationship is to take an interest in the career or the experience of your boss. Ask them how they got to where they are. Ask them what they would do differently. Ask them what advice they would have for you. Skill number 2 is ask for the details. What happens a lot of times in organizations is managers perceive that you're indifferent or you don't care about your work if you don't approach them and ask about your work. And sometimes I know that you don't want to ask questions because you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. But the worst thing in the world is to walk out of somebody's office not knowing what you're doing. And so just initiate by going for the details. Here's what's happened within corporations. We used to have a span of control years ago of 1 to 3, 1 to 5. 1 manager to 3 people, 1 to 5. Today it's as high as 1 to 25. Managers are spread so thin, but they're not really paying attention to detail, and they're assuming that you understand them when you nod your head, right? And so go for the details. Now, this is totally appropriate. Now, back in the day, maybe not so much. But we have something today that we're studying called feedback-seeking behavior. And there are two ways to seek feedback, and one of them is to get clarity on what's expected in your job. I can't tell you how many times I've had young professionals be frustrated that they worked 2 to 3 weeks on a project only to find out it's not what their manager wanted. Skill number 3, see the big picture. And this is systems thinking. One of the perceptions of millennials is that you're myopic, and all you see is right in front of you and what impacts you. So when you ask for that extended holiday for yourself and you're told no, that you're really frustrated not understanding how it impacts the whole system. So in this case, try to go beyond what just impacts you and your role and learn how what you do impacts everybody else in the organization. Now, that lack of experience, one way to overcome a lack of experience is to try to learn and think big picture and connect the dots. The next skill is know when to focus. And knowing when to focus, you have a bad rap for being distracted because of multitasking. By the way, millennials, I love this. I had in an onboarding session once, a millennial said, "Hey, our brains are different than yours." And I said, how so? Well, because we have all these technology devices. I said, I think evolution takes a little longer than an iteration between iPhones, right? And so this idea is that this perception that you're multitasking, we know that in brain function, we have to know when to focus, when we have response work versus focus work. And so look at that time and don't leave your schedule available to respond to every email or tweet or Instagram at that moment. Pick a time to access that. Now, I know one of the things I tell companies, and this is you, is that you don't mind accessing work during your personal life, but you want to access your personal life during work. It's what I call work-life blending or work-life fusion. But even if you have a company that has a policy that allows you to do that, you're going to have to discipline yourself to be able to know when to focus. Skill number 5 is another feedback-seeking behavior, and it's go for feedback. You saw a challenge of knowing what is expected of you or knowing how you're doing. Again, because of the challenges of management and the time they have, is that a lot of times they are not going to give you timely feedback on what your work is. And I know that millennials thrive on feedback. That was another difference that I saw in my students. A student could turn in a paper Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. and I'll get an email at 6 a.m. on Monday saying, "What'd you think of my paper?" Right? That immediacy and sense of instant feedback. The perceived weakness that you have is that you're defensive at any kind of critique that you don't perceive as being positive. One of the things you need to learn is to not take things personally or as attack against you, but simply separate your work and your project from your person. The more defensive you act when somebody gives you feedback, the worst thing that can happen is that they'll start withholding feedback from you. What I saw in many managers is they said, "I stopped giving feedback because I didn't want to deal with the drama that was involved." And so the worst thing you can do, now, you can initiate feedback if you're not getting it. Matter of fact, some companies I'm working with now, we're taking annual reviews out and we're putting it into the responsibility of the employee to initiate feedback on evaluation. And if you need evaluation, you can initiate that. But here's the rule. When you go and say, "How did I do on that project?" If you didn't get an A+, do not freak out, okay? Thank them for the feedback. Here's one way you can do it. You could say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think I did on that project? And your manager may say, "I think you did a 5. And well, that's not acceptable to any of us, is it? But rather than get defensive, you can say, "What would I have to do differently to get a 7 or an 8? And now you can start getting constructive feedback. The next skill is be accountable. And one of the biggest frustrations that managers had was that employees were disengaged or just wouldn't take responsibility for projects. If something went wrong, it got projected onto the manager or the organization. Well, I wasn't trained, or nobody told me that. And so this being accountable for your work, and by the way, this is the key really in your transition to management, is that the more accountable you are for your work, the greater you're going to stand out amongst your peers and other workers. So take seriously this idea of saying, I own this. Even if it wasn't my fault, I'm going to own this for my team. Being accountable means I'm not going to make excuses. Now, I have to tell you something. I have a son. I have 4 kids. I have a son who's never done anything wrong. I should have named him Jesus. I don't care what it is, it's always somebody else's fault. And I'm just going, Chandler, just take responsibility, be accountable. The other day he got bit by a rattlesnake. And he picked it up. He picked it up after it bit him. Okay, I'm not qualified to teach after I just told you that story. I have a son who would pick up a rattlesnake after it bit him. But he picked it up because as a baby rattler, he didn't know, and somebody came along and says, what's the matter with you? Put that down. So he does, and they call 911, and he comes home and he goes, you never told me that baby rattlers don't have rattles. That's my fault he got bit and picked it up. So this idea is don't make excuses. Be accountable. And then the last one is recognize your value in the organization. And you might say, yeah, that's right, I'm valuable in the organization, but the perception is that you have hubris, that you think you're more value than you really are at it, okay? And so in this case, what we want is we want to align what our strengths are with what the organization needs. The best way to provide value is to find out what's needed of you and apply your strengths to those needs. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is the transition into management. 2 things to anticipate. A redefinition of relationship with your peers, because once you move up, you're not one of them anymore. It's a lonely time. But don't allow it to make you go backwards. It's only for a season. I had one young woman manager say, a friend all the way from junior high unfriended me on Facebook because she didn't want me snooping on her life since I was her boss. The second redefinition of moving into management is with the person that promoted them. They had a fear of disappointing the person that promoted them. So on one shoulder, they had an intuition of how they should lead and manage, and on the other shoulder, they had the person that promoted them. And they would have this inner tension about what they should do. Let me tell you this. You are going to disappoint the person that promoted you. It's inevitable. But you have to be authentic, and you have to fail, and you have to learn from that failure. Because resiliency is the key to a successful career. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chip. If you could stay with us, please. And we will be joined by a panel where you will have a chance to ask all the questions. And let me also introduce the panel, please, if you, in the second chair. Fantastic. Thank you, Chip. First of all, I welcome to the panel Mr. Adam Mariuk, who is a talent partner and head of global employer services in Deloitte. Welcome, and please join us here. Secondly, I would like to welcome Mr. Piotr Herstowski, who is the president of ISEC Poland and also a millennial himself. So we're looking forward to hearing your reaction on what was already said. We welcome also Mrs. Anna Kozińska, the Corporate Center Director at Warsaw School of Economics, the President of the HR Leaders Club, and a person with extensive corporate life experience in many, many places. Wherever there's a, please, we'll do a very nice mix. And last, but of course not least, Mrs. Magda Kotlarczyk, who comes from Google Poland. She is a performer sector lead, and we welcome her to the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, well, this is how it's going to work. I will start with 1-2 questions to the panel, so we can have this kind of a warm-up, and then basically the floor is back to you. So any questions you would like to ask the panel, the representatives, but also Chip, I assume you'll have some questions to the presentation we'll have. That will be possible to do then. If you don't want to ask a question personally, again, you can use the hashtag on Twitter or Facebook, hashtag Millennials, and the questions will also appear somewhere here. Actually, we already have something there, but we'll try to do it one by one. So let me start, and Chip, if you will agree, I will not start with you. I'll actually start with Magda from the other side, Google Poland. Tell me, Magda, and this is a question about basically to the whole panel. How do you think international, but also Polish companies are dealing with this first global generation? Are they dealing with it? Are they capable of actually facing this huge challenge of a new generation in the workforce?
I do trust that they are dealing with it because there is no single possibility that they are not, since the demographics are speaking for itself. This is going to be the leading force. So, you've got over 2 billion people out there, so you cannot ignore a new generation that is coming out to the market. So I would say, thank God they are coming, because while initially they are bringing a little bit of headache to all the managers and to all the boards of directors and all the other people from more senior generations, I believe that they are the source of some disruption that is leading to innovation. So people do not appreciate, we all tend to say, oh yes, we love change, oh yes, we go for change. But then when we face change, we say like, oh, I like actually the way it was before. I don't like anyone to put us out of our comfort zone. And actually, you guys are putting us out of our comfort zone, and no matter how much complaints you hear from your managers to be about the way what you represent and the way you behave, I think we should be all thankful that you are arriving with your wind of change to the working environment, because you will be the source of innovation for the future, and actually for now as well. The sooner the better, I would say.
Fantastic, thank you. Adam, tell me, do you think that the Polish millennials have already had an impact on culture? You deal with taxes. That's a very conservative area of work, I can imagine. But you are working with the new generation. Do you feel they're having impact on how you relate, how you work, how the structures of Deloitte are formed today?
Well, if you look at the BBC site, which shows the jobs which will be extinct in 10 years, tax advisor is one of them. So
there will be no tax advisors.
We will not be around anymore.
One problem out of the picture.
But maybe coming to the question how we are preparing for the millennials. I like the question because it brings to my mind the Game of Thrones. Winter is coming, the millennials are coming, and I think this is pretty much the mindset of some organizations. Yes? So we will build a big wall, but we will die anyway, and some of them may be lucky enough to retire because there are so many of them. And I think this is the perception which we may have, yes, that it is us against them. The boomers, the Generation X, and by the way, if I was born before 83, can I classify as a millennial as well? Is it the mindset or is it the date? So yes, this is what we think sometimes. Yes, how we prepare for the millennials. And I've had just recently, I had a conversation with one of our partners, and he was very, very aware. And he said, so how should we prepare? Should we tell them that they have to adapt, or should we adapt?
And what did he say?
Now, he was wondering which one is right. And I think this is a good starting point.
And what do you think? You should adapt, or they
I
have
don't
to
think
adapt?
either of them. I don't think this is the question of who should give in. I think it's more a matter of we will work together. Because in Poland, in an organization like Deloitte, we celebrated 25 years last year, yes? Which means most of us are in our 30s, 40s. Not most of us, but a lot of us. We are not going anywhere. Yes, we are not going anywhere out of the job market, which means we will have to work together. And newsflash, there will be a generation after the millennials as well, which we probably will have to work together with as well. So we just have to work together on different issues and see more people and persons behind the labels. And the more we do it on an everyday basis, the better chances we have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. Piotr, are you a millennial? Or are you not? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so we had that discussion back in the room, and I think many of you might also think very similarly as I do, because I feel that I'm in a limbo between Generation X and Generation Y. There is many things I find about myself to be more naturally related to Generation X, but obviously the external world usually say that I'm a very obvious millennial. And I think many young people face that problem today. I would just like to refer to what was said, because having this discussion, should we adapt or should we not adapt, there is always this one quote of Rupert Murdoch revolving around my mind. I don't know, guys, if you know, Rupert Murdoch is a guy who bought MySpace in 2005 for almost $600 million. And then he sold it in 2011 for $35 million. Best deal ever. And he said that in today's world, it's not the big beating the small, it's the fast beating the slow. And I believe, given that story, the guy knows what he's talking about. So I believe it's not even a discussion, it's a necessity, because the world is changing. And one way or another, people have to adapt, both workforce, both the job market. And speaking this, also the employers. Because looking at the demographics of Poland, there is less and less students because the population is dropping also. So if the companies want to have a competitive edge in their human resources, they have to invest in adaptation and alignment with what the workforce that is in the market expects.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Anna, the university, is it fit for millennials? Is it fit for millennials? That's a question.
Of course. At least our university is not only ready, but really supportive for people thinking like millennials. And I have real proof of it because we are happy that today the proof was published. This is a book, you may get it in front of the aula, that shows 80 great students team working with business. They were not waiting for anybody to teach them how to deal with business. They start business projects in every business area. So they create startups in the meaning of new applications. They start new business models for themselves. They try to be active with all companies present at Warsaw School of Economics. So I think that our students were not patient enough that the educational system would support them. They started the entrepreneurial activity very smart way, working with market leaders like Deloitte, you are our really important supporter, and other companies, some of them are present today in the audience. And that's the way that other universities should think about millennials and workplace. Some years ago, I was on the side of university doing research on relations with business. So university was closed, students were sitting in rooms, and the business was outside. Today, if you visit Warsaw School of Economics any day of the school year, academic year, you will see business inside. That's a meeting point for different companies and talents we grow at Warsaw School of Economics. So that there is a total change of attitudes. Students are brave. They represent all these factors mentioned in your book. But I think that for all these questions are answers in HR. So human resource directors know the answers for all the questions, how to achieve the best culture and environment for young people.
Chip, any thoughts?
Well, a couple of things. Number one is that there was a pattern in my research amongst young professionals. And the higher degree, the greater the disconnect with expectation at work. Because you've made an investment and you're working hard and therefore you want it to pay off. So one thing is that I think you're more susceptible to some of the perceptions, particularly entitlement, simply because you've worked hard to get there and you want to play a role immediately. The other thing I want to say is generational theory is what I've talked about and based my work on. But I would be remiss not to share with you the argument against generational theory. And it's what we call maturational theory. And it comes out of developmental psychology. And what it basically says is that at 1 year old, someone should be walking. By 2, they should be talking. By 6, they shouldn't be telling huge lies in school. By 18, they should graduate high school. By 22, college. By 23, have a career. By 25, be married and have a mortgage. And does that sound like today's millennial? No. Psychologists are suggesting that they add a stage in the life cycle that's called emerging adulthood, that would go from 18 to 25, that would account for the fact that millennials are putting off 7 years what previous generations did. Now, here's the key. There's some good stuff to this. While other generations may look at you and go, oh, by the time I was their age, I was this, I was that. Here's what's beautiful about it. Many of you are doing things and traveling and getting experiences that are going to form the rest of your lives. I know one person that went and did an internship before they went to college because they weren't sure they really wanted to study and spend all that money on a career they were unsure of. I think those are things that are going to emerge out of your population and generation. This notion that you don't have to do it all in this sequential pattern. But here's the deal for companies that concerns me, is that many of them operate by maturational theory. And they think once they get you saddled with a family and a mortgage, you'll start thinking like them, right? But what happens in that gap is that knowledge transfer, they lose out on being able to connect with you. So that's why for my work, I wanted to move the discussion away from being about millennials to being a discussion with millennials. I wrote Millennials Who Manage because I wanted to give back to a population that really inspired my work.
Thank you, Chip. Any first questions out there? Okay, so we move on, and we'll come back to you, so do prepare. Let's discuss the 7 skills that Chip has mentioned, and I would like to get some feedback from our panel on what do you think about them. Let me just briefly remind you about those 7 skills. So first, it's building relationships. Second, it's asking for details. Third, it's seeking the big picture. Fifth, it's knowing when to focus. Then the next is going for feedback. Finally, being accountable and recognizing one's value. Is any of these of utter importance from the point of view of your companies, of your institutions, of the university? Which one of these has really kind of resonated with you? And you said, yes, if my employees would actually do this, they would be so much better off, I would be so much better off, the company would be so better off. Who wants to start? I'm liberal here.
I can start. I think that the only great competence you saw on the list is seeing the big picture, because that dominates the others. You know, we had in Poland transformation time. That time, tools were the key factors to success. Excel and the knowledge of English was the really guarantee to make career very quickly. Today, everybody has access to all tools. Everybody can speak different languages. The only thing you need to be talented for is to see the big picture. And that makes the difference in a real business life. So I hope that millennials will not lose the time at universities to build that approach. In other skills, you may join company very quickly and work in a role of expert or specialist, and you will not be seen and you will not be promoted. But those who will have this skill, this one especially, will be noticed by your bosses, by HR, because those people are the potential for innovation for the company, people who can see more than others. So I would privilege this competence more than others.
So see the big picture. It's Anna's choice. Adam.
Who thinks so?
Okay, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay, more people, big picture. Fantastic. We'll
All HR's club.
Adam, yes.
So I would say none of them.
Okay. Then what?
And I would also say all of them. Because I read the book, and I think they go together. If you build just on one, probably you will not get the result that if you build on all 7 of them. That doesn't mean you should build on them at the same time with the same importance, but you should remember about all of them. And by the way, I like the book, because now I know what I can expect from my millennials at work, but also I think there is a mirror image to us, not being the millennials, to know that this is what is important for them. We should mirror it in our cooperation and in our behavior. So we should also be building relationships. We should be giving feedback in a proper way, probably not the way which was given to us when we were seeking for it, if we were seeking for it. And we should be doing all the other things. And that's my answer.
Excellent. So none of them, but all of them, really. Synergies. Magda.
I think all 7 are absolutely valid, but I'll go for one which is which I observe as the one that enables me to have a good working relationship with millennials, and this is being accountable. Also because this one is the closest to what I also believe as a key skill, which is leadership. And this is the one factor that when I was junior in my role, I've heard once from my boss, leadership is not given, it's stolen. So kind of no one will actually ask you to allow you to be accountable. You actually have to go and take still that accountability for your project. Don't be afraid of the responsibility. Do not be afraid of making mistakes. I bet that you will encounter managers that will actually allow you to make mistakes as long as they know that you have 100% accountability and responsibility and ownership and lead of that project. On the other side, I've noticed also, I've picked up the ones that that are active, because I'm so much obsessed about the leadership and accountability skill that everything that is about an active verb, like go and ask for feedback, you know, build relationship rather than passive sit and wait, which basically is not on the list, but the active bits are important. And my final remark is, it will be difficult for you and it will be confusing for you to master all 7 at the same time. So even if we want to keep this session actionable, just, you know, note down on your smartphone, in your notebook, the 3 that for the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months will be the ones that you want to test how it works for you, and how, thanks to applying the 3, you are making progress in your career or academic development. So 3 out of 7, go for them and just do them.
May I have a question to Magda? But I wanted to ask generally of Google HR policy. If I'm a student and I approach you as an employer, if I ask all these questions building my personality, what will be your answer? Will I find a space for reward to feel self-assured? Will I find all these wonderful things Chip has described for employers?
You will definitely, the 7 skills resonate with the Google philosophy of hiring. Okay, so that's definitely something that is very very consistent. We may not have 7 of them and name them with the same words, but in principles they are absolutely the same. The overwhelming principle that we use at Google, or whenever we are in the process of recruitment, we are asking ourselves a question: is this person smarter than we are? And if the answer is yes, it's a definitely yes for a hire. So, and it's not that easy to use the interview itself to demonstrate that you are that you are smarter than the interviewer itself. But that's definitely something that that we are seeing. And the second question that I am asking myself, and this is out of my experiences as interviewer, whenever I'm interviewing someone for a more junior job, I'm asking myself a question: would I like that person to be my boss one day? And if the answer is yes, if my guts tell me that, yes, then it is an extra argument for me to mark a double yes on the hiring, on the interviewing sheet. So.
Thank you. That answer makes me to think about partnership with Google.
Thank you very much. Piotr, so if you were to write down as a millennial, the 3, 2 or 1 of these things for you to try or recommend to your friends, what would it be?
I think the one that resonates with me the most is, there is a special one actually, because I believe that conversations change organizations. And having a chance to lead one of the biggest youth-run organizations in Poland, a big NGO actually, I can see that. So for me, this one special thing is asking for feedback. But I would add upon this also willingness to give feedback. From my own experience, I remember when I was, I think, 20 or 21, I used to work for a very small company. When I entered it, I immediately saw things that should be changed. And I was very willing to share my concerns. And they were like, no, we are doing these things for 20 years. I was like, yeah, that's exactly why you should change it, because the sales is decreasing and all that. And I left the company. Obviously, they didn't change it. For today, they don't exist anymore. And I believe that's only one example that...
That must be the reason.
Because I left, I guess so. So I think this asking for feedback and also giving feedback is something that gives us a space for building the relationship, for creating space for people to take accountability and responsibility. And all these things that were mentioned in the book as certain skills or attitudes, approaches, whatever. Because I believe all of them are relevant, but I would start with that as a starting point for all the other 6 to happen.
Absolutely, thank you. Before I give you the floor, I just wanted to point out on a few things here in the back, and I think we also see a bit of a kind of generation conflict. If you look, many idiot millennials think freedom is just a given. They have absolutely no sense of price. Our ancestors paid for the freedoms we have. I think that's something a lot of millennials get. You know, people do tell you, I mean, you don't appreciate what you have. You know, we've made such a sacrifice and so on and so forth. So that is something that does resonate with the older generations. But then again, millennials are all about responsibility. So how does that fit really into the picture? So you don't appreciate, but you are responsible. You want to be accountable, but then you know you want to work against the hierarchy that you've seen. So how do we deal, Chip, with this conflict of generation?
Well, first of all, the whole concept of generation is that there are generalizations, right? And these perceptions we're talking about aren't true of every millennial. What I'm trying to say in my work is that if you're perceived in a certain light and people act according to those perceptions, it will create a challenge for you. So whether you're this way or not, as far as the perception, doesn't matter. It's perception acted upon that creates reality. So what I've tried to do is to help millennials to understand this is why I'm experiencing a person who's treating me in a certain light, and this is what I can do to overcome that. So when you look at millennials, when it comes to responsibility, I find millennials very responsible, particularly, like I said earlier, they want a lot of detail for what do I need to achieve, what do I need to get to the next level. The love language for millennials is career development. You go in with an expectation of step by step, what can I do to get to the next level? You're willing to take responsibility for that, but you need to do that. By the way, for millennial managers, one of the challenges next to the relationship thing I talked about was overfunctioning. Overfunctioning comes as a result. In other words, older workers would say, you're better at technology than I am, so why don't you do this? And so millennial managers would do older workers' job for them. Well, you know the adage, if you're doing somebody else's job, you're not doing whose job? Your own. And so millennials fell into the trap of overfunctioning. And so because they were taking such responsibility for their work, but ultimately that undermined their effectiveness. And so that's where that whole notion of being accountable, taking responsibility, but also the ability to hold others accountable, perhaps is the most difficult transition to do.
Thank you, Chip. Millennials, where are you? Where are the questions? First question. If we can pass the mic to the beautiful lady in fourth row, sorry.
I don't know if I can ask a question because I'm 1980, so if I'm millennial. Because you said 83, it's the end of millennial age, so. Okay, am I allowed to ask a question? Good. So my question is about giving and receiving feedback, because from my experience, it really required personal courage, right? So it's not easy to give feedback and get feedback. And it's still room for improvement. I work with a lot of managers, and I still believe it's easier when you have international people, because they are more eager to say also thank you. In Poland, I still see that there is bad feedback or no feedback, right? So how to help companies to improve this personal courage? What would be your answer?
Any other questions immediately here? We just have somebody next, so we'll take two questions and then the next round.
I have a question about like how millennials become like they had higher position later, because in the beginning we are like we expect a lot from our employees, and for example, I had for a few years experience, so I observed that when we become like more we get higher position, we become managers, then we hire people, and we are not so much elastic and open for all these things that millennials want. And I see that it's changing instead of being, you know, have higher position, etc. Thank you.
So two basic questions. First, how to ask and how to have the courage actually to ask for feedback. What would you recommend here? And the second question more on also the flexibility, the ability to approach. Chip, would you like to start or yeah? Yeah. So Magda. Then
giving and receiving feedback is a skill, is art, no matter the generation, okay? And I do believe that actually it will be thanks to you guys that we may actually learn, all generations back, may actually, and future generations may learn how to do it in a better way, you know, in an open way, how to speak up our minds, without the fear that it might be wrongly interpreted. I think that giving and receiving feedback varies by culture as well, so there are some cultural differences. However, I do believe that if you manage to establish that your feedback is genuine and that you are doing so not because you are expected to, but because you care for the individual, because it's developmental feedback, something that you know, will help me grow. You know, that's critical for a good and successful feedback. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but
yeah. So I think giving and receiving feedback is exactly difficult because we think about it this way. Because in the end of the day, it's about talking to the other person. And I think I completely agree on the genuinity, but I think what's even more important is to build a sense of doing it for the betterment of the organization or your surroundings, which might be your organization. And I think if you give the other person giving feedback or receiving feedback, this sense of caring of what's happening around you, then the feedback should not be difficult because everyone cares for the same thing. The problem is when you recognize that people around you in your company care for different things. But it's not a matter of feedback, it's a matter of building a culture of the organization.
There is a story from a very, very old book. And I will tell the story in business terms. There was a guy, he was having a presentation to a number of people, let's say 300 people. And he made serious mistakes in the presentation about facts, about the interpretation of the facts. And the presentation was over. And two of the people stood up from the crowd, invited him for coffee, took him away from the crowd, invited him for coffee, and then showed him a better way. And from this story, I can say that we give feedback when we have relationship. We give feedback and we ask for feedback when we are in proper conditions and circumstances. So don't give feedback if it's constructive or sometimes it's negative. Constructive is not the right word sometimes. Don't give it in public. Yes? And be positive about the feedback. What can a person learn from the feedback for the future, even if it is negative? And I think this is what happened 2,000 years ago, and I think this is what can happen now if we remember about this.
Yeah. When I look at it from an organizational perspective, there are a couple of, one dimension you mentioned is cultural awareness. If I'm a millennial, I look at what Gen X is doing, okay? Because they know how to manage upward to baby boomers better than anybody else. So you can take a lot of cultural clues off of Gen X and learn from them. Exactly. And the other side, I would say, in giving feedback from a management organizational perspective, and you touched on it, is what I learned was from a millennial manager. And I was in class getting ready to lecture. They came in early, and it was obviously they planned to meet together. And the one managed a skate shop, surf shop. And his best friend worked for him. So he says to him, he says, "Where were you last night?" And his friend says, "Oh, I got invited to the beach bonfire. I couldn't miss it." And he says, "Look, you and I are friends, and we'll always be friends, But if you miss work again, you're fired. Now, where do you want to have lunch after class? Millennials are focused on relationship over the feedback. And if you can assure them that the relationship is intact, they're willing to listen to critical feedback. And so I would reverse that to many of you, is that sometimes don't make it as a judgment of you as a person or the judgment of your relationship with your manager, but try to listen to the feedback.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other recommendations for the second question here? How to proceed with the career when you're starting from a very low level and it seems extremely difficult to, move up the ladder, and the expectations, that you have do not meet the expectations of the boss, who wishes that you work here for 5 years and then maybe, promote on a mid-something career, and in 20 years you'll get to where he is.
Be the owner of your career. Do not expect anyone to decide for you, okay? So as part of the skills, take accountability also for the things that, for your career. If this is a boss that is not supporting you, if this is a boss that is not, that you believe is not kind of, caring for you, he may fire you, but you may change boss as well, within the organization or within a different company. So I think this thinking of, freedom, whether we, you guys appreciate it or not, you're actually living in a free, even corporate world. So take advantage for it. But then this requires taking decisions, and do not let other people take decisions on that concern your career, if these are decisions that you do not agree with. But then be ready for taking the responsibility and paying the consequences for your own decision. And this is probably the most difficult thing to do.
Absolutely. Adam, you wanted to add something?
We agreed that we will not agree, yeah? But unfortunately I have to agree. This is the first thing which I learned at work. You are the owner of your career. And if you work for me, if you miss the deadline for your evaluation, I will not come chasing you. This is your task to get feedback. Yes, and we don't do this. And I preach it also to my people at work. This is the responsibility of the employee. But your responsibility as a manager or as a boss is to be available, and to be available in a meaningful way. So but it is important. You are the owner of your career, and you should not be afraid of risks. We keep saying now our people change jobs every 3 years or every 2 years. Whenever we train them, they want to do something else. Well, honestly speaking, I started to work in '99. I first changed my job in 2001, then in 2002, then in 2004, then almost in 2007, but I stayed. I stayed within the organization and changed the job. And now I'm changing every two or 3 years, doing something different within the same organization.
For the better one, or?
Always for the better, until I joined Deloitte, which was the best one. So do not be afraid of taking risk. Discuss your situation with your bosses, with your managers, and if they are not in line with you, well, we hear about war for talent, yes? Why should you stay in this place?
Absolutely. So let's go back to our board. There's a lot of good things written about millennials here. Millennials can be relied on for freedom. Millennials identify with creativity. That's definitely, a good thing. And millennials are making a difference. But I also saw somewhere out there that millennials are relying on their bosses to manage their finances. I don't know what that means exactly. Like, do you decide, you give your boss your paycheck and say, please tell me what I should do with it? I don't know what the author had in mind. And a more funny one, I think, that someone needs to tell the millennials that listening to audiobooks does not classify as reading. Okay, we'll remember this one. Great. Next questions from the audience. We have 1, 2, 3. We'll take them all three to go. And it's the row, so if you can pass the mic as you go.
So we were talking about the ownership for our own career, right? And so Chip, when you were speaking about the 7 rules, I thought, oh my God, I'm doing all of those mistakes, at least half of them, let's say. And then you said that it's either everything or nothing. So we either apply 7 rules in our careers or nothing. And I was wondering, am I able to do it? I mean, have you done any research? Are we millennials able to, is it easy to apply those rules? Do you have any tips and tricks how to do it?
Well, I think they build on each other, just as Adam stated, that they kind of all work together. And yeah, I mean, they're how can I, almost obvious things that you can do, but what makes them powerful is that you'll understand now that you've read, that you've seen this, what's happening to you in a situation. So rather than being reactionary to it, you can be proactive. And part of my work really is, in psychology, we have a term called locus of control. And if you have an external locus of control, everything's about what's happening externally to you and what they need to do for things to be better for you. But if you have an internal locus of control, it's where you're taking responsibility or action or being proactive yourself. So if you look at all of the challenges that millennials face, some of them, you have a higher degree of locus of control. For instance, in your lack of experience, you can start to do more things and tap into other people's experience. When it comes to getting respected, you still have control, act, respectful, and then people will respect you. You have less control over that, but for every one of them, the skills are about taking an internal locus of control and saying, I'm not going to be a victim to the situation, but I'm going to do things that can make a difference and matter. And that's really, I think, the power of it. And so for each one of those, they're all really about you taking control of the situation.
Okay, we'll move to the next 2 questions. We'll take both of them, and then I'll give the floor to our panel because we're almost out of time.
One question, how millennials approach competition? And how do they feel when they fail? Because here the word we picture is quite sweet. Google is an exception, and Deloitte is also an exception as employers.
Okay.
So the word is really nasty behind those walls. So maybe you can also tell us a little bit about.
Thank you. So the question about competition is the first question. Yeah, please.
Me? Okay. So hello everyone, my name is Ola and thank you for all of your answers. I have a question from a little bit different point of view because as you said, we need to improve a lot of these kind of things, but I'm wondering what if we as a millennials achieve this 35 years old and we will be not millennials anymore. So what we can do today as a millennials to be still attractive for market, but after achieving this 35 years old.
Okay. And the last question, I think there was a gentleman. Sorry, Chip, we'll take it and I'll remind you,
So as we've talked today also about the diversity, but there are still companies who are really employs the people who are similar to their vision, so they're not taking diversify generation, but they're trying to get people who are similar to who they work with. So what do you think is better for millennials and why do millennials should adapt to the diversity of people in the organizations?
Okay, great. Chip, would you like to start?
I'll respond to the second question quickly,
let's start with
and
that.
then I'll let the panel handle
the rest.
Here's the news. You're always going to be a millennial. Okay? That's who you are for the rest of your life as far as your generational label. And by the way, I say label. So it's not that you'll quit being a millennial after 35. I'm often asked, what's the next generation? Some are calling it Gen Z, some IY. What do I think about them? I haven't researched them in the workplace. Mine is about generational diversity in the workplace. I have a feeling that in some instances the pendulum's going to go out farther on wanting to prove their value and those kinds of things. I think that something has shifted in the parenting of that generation, and the whole notion that everybody gets a trophy just for participation. I think Gen X parents have kind of looked at that and said, you didn't deserve that. You didn't. And matter of fact, my own daughter, who's probably on the borderline of that next generation, said, I don't deserve a trophy. We didn't win. We were the last place team in the league, right? So I think that to answer it, one is you're always going to be a millennial, and that's a good thing.
Thank you, Chip. So maybe on the question of competition, do you feel that we have, the new generations is competitive enough? Do they care enough? And is that important in the workplace? Anna.
As I already have Mike, I want to answer all questions.
Please do.
Concerning competition, some research says that the competition is lower, but from the HR point of view, it looks a bit different. That if we push individuals to work hard for their position in the company, it means that they are very competitive to each other and sometimes even to themselves, which is my warning to you. Yeah? You may be competitive to the environment, to high standards, but neither to yourself. And a very important thing connected with competition is diversity in the organization. Seeing so many good companies, great organization, I may say that the best composition is to be mixed with different ages of people. You will not find better for yourself than good mentor. And those mentors you will find in an organization with the open culture. And if you are able to find such an organization for yourself, you are the winners. So please read the book and make a list of questions you will ask your future employers. You have to demand all high standards as far as open culture, culture of assessment, culture of advising, and if you will note that there is a system of mentors, that's a good sign already for using diversity in a company. I don't think that at Google that they have mentors out of millennials. You mentor each other?
We do mentor each other, yes. We do mentor each other and we swap roles sometimes. So we do, sometimes it's called shuffle week, sometimes it's called just swap role exercise. So this is something that we do believe that, you know, walking in someone else's shoes is the source of great insights for us to better perform in our current roles. So,
may I ask to the audience, because that really teases me, why millennials use so much Snapchat?
Why do you use Snapchat? Anybody? Because it goes away. Because it's not permanent.
That was the question from the table. So, what is your opinion?
That might be easier. Where, you know, the next day, you know, you're like, oh, I posted that on Facebook, and I kind of can't delete it because everybody saw it. So now I'm embarrassed, and now I'm not going to post as much. Whereas Snapchat, you can just post things, and it's gone in 24 hours, and voila, something new happens.
Thank you. Okay, because we have... Yeah. Because we have to wrap up slowly, I would like to give the floor to Adam and to Piotr as a kind of final word, and then Chip, the last word is to you. So please, Adam.
Okay, so to answer the question asked by you, practical tips: get a book, memorize all 7 things, write them down on a piece of paper, get the book to your manager, and always make sure you are working on the same skill.
That's good.
You should
I couldn't
write
have
a
said
book.
it better. You should follow me around.
And even if it sounds mechanical, if you keep repeating this, it will be part of you very sooner rather than later.
Fantastic, thank you. Piotr, please.
So on the competition, because I think this is something I can I can really contribute to. And this is important because I believe our generation has a huge sense of contribution. We want to contribute. And we want this contribution to be recognized, where the classic competitiveness does not really serve the explanation. Because it's not no longer being about it's no longer about being better than other people, but about having the best contribution possible and other people seeing it. Because I believe our generation, on a very general note, is also driven by image. So we want to be seen as certain something. Doesn't really matter what it is, but we want to be seen as something. We want to stand out. And this contribution is something that grants us an opportunity to stand out in a specific thing. Yeah.
Fantastic. And yeah.
I was not asked, but I just wanted to check if you remember which was my favorite skill. Who remembers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. And Chip, the final word is for you.
The final word, I just want to say I've loved my time in Poland, and its beauty is only exceeded by its people.
Thank you so much, Chip. Thank you very much. Stay for just a second. We have two more things to do. First, we have a present to our guest, honored guest, Chip, for you, if you will allow. It's a special present from today, so I hope you'll like it.
Oh, boy.
So this is for you from today, and this is the author who has made it before we came.
I have to say, this has to be my favorite thing I've ever received after speaking. I get a bunch of glass, I get trophies that I didn't deserve, but to have my picture, now that's special. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chip. I'm very happy. Yeah, thank you. And also, for the rest of the day, awesome news. Thank you so much for being with us today. Also small presents from our And the final thing, we have asked you to leave these cards, and we are, what is the price?
10 books of Millennials at Work.
10 books of Millennials at Work will be given out to the, I think Chip should actually do the lottery. So, you know, give him the hand. And a workshop, Generations, that is sponsored by Deloitte. So the first person who gets a book is Paulina Pracz. Is she here? If somebody is not here, too bad. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So please come to get the book. Magdalena Prokop. Ah, fantastic. Please do join us here. It's Szymon Perent. Do we have Szymon Perent here? Yeah, no? So we'll have one more. Inga Laurent. Inga Laurent, she's here. Fantastic. Freda Tola, is that correct? Great, fantastic. What do we have more? Jakub Miksa, and that's, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we have 4 more to go. Julia Cinkanczuk, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, got it that wrong. Radosław Grodzki, zapraszamy serdecznie. And Mariola Stawińska, and the last person is Joanna Chmielewska. So these are the books. These are the books, and now we're going to select książka. A dostał pan książkę? To już idzie, tak. Everybody got their book? Tak, to niestety książkę. So these were the books, 10 books given out to those who were chosen. And now one more choice for the workshop that is sponsored fully by Deloitte. Please, Chip, do choose. Paulina Siwak. Is she here? Congratulations, Paulina. You got the workshop. Please come and pick up the voter. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a great round of applause to Chip and the wonderful panel today. And again, great thanks to Warsaw School of Economics, Deloitte, and most importantly to you, the generation, and the people who will be changing the world. Do it smart, do it wise, do it with passion, and we wish you all the best in your future careers.